All right, welcome everyone to the MSP CyberCorner. We're very glad that you are here. We are going to get started in just a few moments, so take a minute, get settled. As attendees are rolling in, we want to encourage you, introduce yourselves in the chat feature of Zoom. We want to know, where you're located, your name, your company information, and we want to, of course, encourage discourse in the chat feature. But for the questions that we're going to address directly, please include those in the Q&A feature in Zoom. So with that, again, welcome to MSP CyberCorner. This is a virtual roundtable discussion that we're going to be focused on pressing questions that face the MSP community, hosted by Celerium. And today's topic, as the slide reads, is around automation and how it aligns with your approach to cybersecurity. As a quick intro, I'm Dan Blidner, Channel Account Executive here at Celerium. We're very happy, again, that you're carving out time in your day joining us for this session. And before we get started answering your questions, especially around automation, we do have a few quick housekeeping items to discuss. So first and foremost, we are recording this session, so we will be following up with the link so you have that for your records. In addition, there's going to be a quick opinion poll at the end of the session. We want to get your feedback, so please do not hesitate to share. So again, thank you, everyone. Please submit these questions. I see them rolling in the Q&A feature. With that, let me introduce my counterpart, Jonathan Sauce Marinaro, Director of Technical Sales. Jonathan is actually going to take you through the lion's share of today's Q&A. I'll be monitoring the chat Discord as well as the additional questions submitted, but we have a few already gathered through our efforts preparing, whether it be on LinkedIn, other social avenues. So with that, John, if you're ready, we can get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. So I guess let's start with some of the ones that we received over email and from LinkedIn and such. And let's see what we got coming in first.
All right. So the first one I see is, how has automation evolved to become such a crucial component in cybersecurity strategies for MSPs?
Oh, that's a great starting one. So the big point that is always made about automation and what it always has, been since before cyber as a thing, not just cybersecurity, before the internet, is it's always there to reduce the workload and reduce the capacity for overload. I mean, we saw this, with the use of the production line for making cars, with Henry Ford, all the way to what we've got these days. So how can we use automation to do the same for our current workflow is the big question. We've seen that really evolve now to kind of tackle not the latest emerging threat that is out there, but to help reduce the other threats that we have already been dealing with, that is the lion's share of our workload at that time. I like to think that there's kind of like three stages. There's the brand new threat that's come on out. There's the stuff that we're trying to automate, and there's the stuff that we've had automated. And so with the brand new stuff, you have to kind of have a little bit more of a human touch on that, because remember that automation is just, basically running a set of scripts, setting kind of a work plan to go through and tackle things and allowing a system to go through and handle that. You then get to the meat of things, or things that we're trying to automate. That's where we're actually understanding them. We're going through and understanding what our workflow to go and handle something is and be able to do it. And that leads us to all the stuff that we have automated. We've seen that with viruses, going through and being able to, automate scans and dealing with that, with malware, and now into ransomware, and even phishing on that. So really, automation is kind of a perpetual game of catch up to whatever the newest, latest emerging threat is.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think, it is important to highlight, this inundation of threats, this kind of J curve in terms of the threats that organizations face, what, the vulnerabilities that MSPs need to address. And I think the evolution of automation is really part and parcel to that evolution of the threat landscape. So with that, the next question I have here, what are the challenges MSPs face in terms of scalability and efficiency that automation tools can effectively address within cybersecurity?
Oh, well, I mean, directly, I would say labor and capacity. The biggest thing that once again it's trying to go through and do is the fact that we just don't have enough people to handle all of the threats that are out there. It will always be a workforce issue. And I know any of our MSPs that are tuning in right now will wholeheartedly attest you never have enough people to handle not just the deployment and management of that, let alone securing it and keeping up on that, and having systems that go through and check on things and verify things like that. So I would say the biggest portion is like, you have a specific workflow or workforce, and it's very hard to always find new people to be able to grow that way to be able to support what you do have. Well, with automation, you can go through and, not just allow that to grow, but hopefully be able to not just conquer that, but be able to expand. We all want to go through and be able to take on new business, make more money, be able to go and really support what's out there while covering all of the bases. And with automation, that will go through and tackle a lot more of the busy work that you don't really need to be focusing on. They shouldn't be focusing on, right?
Absolutely. I think, and it's funny that you mentioned in terms of scalability and efficiency and the growth model of any business, right? In terms of trying to earn more revenue, earn more market share. But I think specific to the MSP community, there's another capacity of that growth of competency. And that automation, I think, is really important to help free up some of those cycles to then be able to dedicate time to the latest and greatest, be able to spread out in terms of new technologies, new focuses. So again, from a capacity state, not only revenue and growth, but also in terms of competency.
Absolutely, absolutely. And really when it comes to going through and keeping up on the latest and greatest, um, keep training yourself. And maybe that's part of what you need to automate as well, is your whole training regimen and training schedule. There's a lot of great systems out there that can go through and do that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Excuse me. So the next question I have here is, how can MSPs leverage automation to streamline routine security tasks? This is actually getting directly into that point, and free up human resources for more strategic and high impact activities. It seems like they are listening. So what do you say to that?
So I would go through and look at I would take a day and look at my day-to-day tasks and see what any of it has that is busy work, things that I can do absent-mindedly that I have to go through and, maybe check on, verify, that kind of thing. And realize that if I can write a script of my actions, then I can script something else to do it for me. That's the basis of automation. That if you can figure out how to go through and get it done so you don't have to think about it yourself, congrats, then a computer can do that. Now, what's great is that with a lot of the automation tools that are out there, especially the ones that are now incorporating things like machine learning and AI, they're able to start learning on this. And I think we'll get in a bit to this later with more questions on like AI and stuff like that, but like what we're able to now see is taking tasks that require a little bit of a thinking component can be offloaded. So how about every time that, you have your computers start up every morning, or, before opening a business, these computers that are running at a client location, do you have it automatically going through and doing a scan every morning? Do you have it going through and doing a perpetual scan of somebody's email to go through and see if there's any kind of phishing emails that are coming on in and having that getting quarantined? That's automation. That's not stuff that you should be doing. That's stuff that you should be offloading so you can go through and tackle things when big things come on in.
Yeah, and that's the other component to this is those routines will grow, and I think that that's a really important note in terms of the use of automation, especially now, understanding we have a visibility into what's on the horizon, and it doesn't look like anything's slowing down. So really being able to leverage this tool to help combat some of that overhead is really essential.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so now we're getting into some interesting topics. The next question highlights incident response. What role does automating incident response play in minimizing the impact of cyber threats, and how can MSPs really optimize these processes?
Ooh, that's a really good one. With incident response, you know, automation is really good at fighting against automation. So whenever something that comes on it, like you got to realize that most cyber threats that are out there are automated, especially in the MSP space. In the SMB to middle to even a lot of the stuff that's going out and tackling the enterprise and high enterprise, it are automated threats. I've given talks before, I think, on both the CyberCorner series, as well as going through and on at conventions and such, that with the growth of AWS, with the growth of AI and everything that's there, there are so many automated threat systems that you can buy and deploy these days to just go through and scan and attack people. And it costs little to no money, and you get to recoup the benefits from people that don't have it secure. So how do we fight that? How do we tackle that with its response? And that's, once again, automation is really good at fighting against automation. Think about how they're using automation to attack and how you can use automation as a wrench into their plans. If you can break their workflow, oftentimes the automation won't hold up and it will crash. Things like, oh, this is a good one. So most threats across the network vector love to scan first and see what ports are open, what connections they're able to make on into your network. The first wrench you can throw on in is to have a network that's protected by something that goes and blocks incoming connections, whether or not it's standard GUIP filtering that you've got on your firewalls to prevent attackers from bad countries, to more advanced technology. I mean, Celerium, we sell technology that does specifically that. There are others that go through and handle other means of ingress attacking, but being able to prevent those connections and block that, so that as they keep trying to ping against you, they realize there's no connection. Well, then they're not going to try anything because they don't see any of the doors or windows unlocked to reach on in. That's a really good way of using automation to fight automation.
Yeah, and I think you just touched upon the complexity of these threats, the reconnaissance that's involved in order to be successful, and really let's not mince words. You're fighting fire with fire, right?
Yep.
If the capacity is good enough for the bad guys, we have to do our best as cybersecurity professionals to learn how we can use that same that same capacity against them. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think I wanted to stress, I like this. Automation is really good fighting automation, right? So
Yes.
I think that is an important principle. So this next question kind of builds upon that. Brought this up to this section just because of the topic. With the increasing sophistication of cyber threats, how can MSPs use automation to ensure timely and accurate vulnerability management? I think that it's, we understand the sophisticated threat requires a sophistication in its solution, but this capacity of timely and accurate vulnerability management, I think is very important to the MSPs.
Another great question. Timely and accurate vulnerability management is the big question there. So to the point of automation taking on automation, automation can be fallible, and that both is on the threat actor side. How I just gave a good example of how you can throw a wrench in their plans, but that also means that a wrench can be thrown in yours. Different automation should be used for different purposes. It must be used for different purposes. I mentioned AI earlier. Everybody's talking about ChatGPT. It is really a ton of automation with a bit of a language learning component slapped on top of it that does a phenomenal job. Not gonna, I work with it a ton on, a bunch of side projects that I do. And it's great at conversing and being able to correlate a large amount of data and try to spit out good answers based on it. That said, I don't want something like that to be protecting my machine against a DDoS attack because it's not going to understand the context or the content of the scenario. Heck, I could also see it being an issue when it comes to dealing with, say, malicious phishing emails, where if the language model does have access to certain things, you could trick it into giving out information that it's not supposed to give. People have been doing that in the past. So understand that each bit of automation will have its light points and its flaws. But that means don't use automation, don't use AI. It just means understand that there's probably a better version of that specifically for what you're doing on that. A great example of, trying to be timely and accurate on your vulnerability management is to use automation to check your own stuff. Once again, one of my favorite talks to give. If you've seen me do a conference presentation, I almost always do a bit on protecting yourself so you can protect your customers. One great way of doing that is to use automation to check yourself. And that's beyond doing things like, penetration testing. Are you having are you having systems automated to go through and check if you've got credentials that are still open? Are you checking to see if you've got automation to see if you are running the latest antivirus on everybody's computer? And are you using automation to check the systems that are there to check? Because you need the redundant level to keep yourself protected, because nobody wants to be that point of failure for their customers, especially if you're the one hired for cybersecurity.
Absolutely. No, that makes a ton of sense. Very good. Excellent. So, timely and accurate vulnerability management with automation, understanding you got to check your own work in a way. And again, based on the MSP community, you really don't want to be that point of entry for your clients. So, protecting yourself is as important, if not even more important, than protecting that client base. So, aligned with that, actually, the next question reads, how can automation contribute to continuous monitoring and compliance management? This is really around looking for assistance within the MSP on maintaining that proactive and adaptive cybersecurity model.
I mean, to the point I just made, being able to use automation to go and cover what you're doing, using automation to be that second pair of eyes checking stuff. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it yourself, but you should use these tools to go and be an extra layer of protection on there. And then you can go and extrapolate that on out. We use automation already in tons and tons of tasks. You aren't providing cybersecurity when you log off for the day, when you're having dinner with your family, when you're sleeping at night, when you're having breakfast. You need automation to cover that. So why aren't you, when you look at the continuous monitoring and compliance management, compliance is 24/7. Compliance will require you to go and say, hey, cool, of this that's of the stuff that's being checked, of all the stuff that I have to go through and match for PCI, for HIPAA, for all these different compliance requirements your customers may have, and then the compliance you may be facing as well. There will be a 24/7 monitoring requirement. Whether or not it's simple monitoring of logs to, I've got to go drop a decent chunk of change on a Splunk instance so that that's all being monitored in real time and that kind of thing, is up to you. It's between you and your compliance god, basically. But that continuous monitoring portion, you need automation for. And so that really gets to that you said that proactive nature. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There is such a thing as being proactive. But being proactive is really being as reactively reactive as you can be. Having your systems be as reactive as possible allows you as a human to be proactive. You need to try to anticipate threats, but you can't respond to a threat until that threat has happened. And you can set up tons and tons of automation to go through and handle all of the other junk that's out there, all of the things that you can think of, because when that next one comes around that you're worried about that you don't have automation written for, you aren't just inundated with work and can handle it yourself. That is the best way to be proactive as a cybersecurity professional, as an MSP or anything, is to automate as much of the busy work off so that you can do what you do best. Don't treat automation as it putting someone out of a job so much as it's allowing you to do the job that they're actually hiring you to do.
I think it's really interesting too to get around that language, and thank you for the individual submitting the question, because proactive and adaptive. And I think that we do get hung up in terms of reactive security versus proactive security. Everyone wants to be as proactive as possible, but as we are well aware, there's no silver bullet and there's certainly no crystal ball. What I like to, just in this discussion, I think it really needs to be kind of maybe regress to simply active and adaptive, right? It's not really proactive, it's not really reactive. What it is it's active. And as long as you're staying ahead in that capacity while simultaneously being adaptive to what the threats that you're up against, that's really the blend to shoot for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so moving on, this question comes from MSP, curious about the consideration he needs to focus on when implementing any customized automation workflows. This is interesting. Yeah, he highlights it, it's a little bit of a kind of explanation, but he has unique security needs based on the different clients he's working with, and he's looking for guidance in terms of what he needs to look out for when implementing those customized automation workflows.
This comes down to something I raised, I think, in the last CyberCorner, that you as an MSP need to be having conversations with your clients on a regular basis. This is not, they're not buying you to just install Norton and walk away. And
if only it was that easy.
Yeah, right. If only I had to run a Windows update and walk away, my life would be much easier. Understand your clients. We see this a lot with the MSP space these days, where you're seeing a lot of MSPs get hyper specialized, where they will not just support a vertical, but a specific segment within a vertical. I was talking to one here in Silicon Valley, actually, who is a MSP that just works with lawyers, and not of the big law firms, of larger than an individual practice, but smaller than, I want to say, like 20 lawyers. So, enough people to have certain amount of data and needing to be able to log into an office and all that kind of stuff. And it's a very specialized practice on this. And so the automations that they've been able to work on are very tailored to what's being done there. And they are able to share it between different sites. They understand that when it comes to, say, an example I gave earlier is they run scans every morning early before any of the lawyers get on up. And so they had to figure out that, hey, some of them are night owls, some of them are early people. So they had to run those scans at a certain time. They go through and they run a automation that goes and does a data check every week on the servers, that goes through and verifies whether or not data is consistent on there, if it's not being manipulated in large chunks, just in case if something gets onto the system, they can go through and not lose too much data on that. They have automation running minute by minute that's going and focusing on VPN connectivity, because with work from home, you need to work, and they need to make sure that those systems are working at their peak capacity, so the lawyers are able to go through and do the law stuff. And it's a great example because I love lawyers. I'm married to one. they're Luddites. They are incredibly smart people that are incredibly terrible with technology more often than ever not. I know probably enough lawyers on one hand to that can, go through and build a computer. So with that in mind, you know, how do they tackle that? How do you create custom automations and implement for those specific things? Is they work with them. They understand what requirements they have, and what they're able to work with, and then come back and say, hey, cool, we've gone through and automated this, and this, and now I'm able to go through and keep a track of this and this on my day to day. And, automations aren't just things that are behind the scenes. You use automations as an MSP in your day, in your minute by minute life with whatever dashboards you're using, whatever systems you're using, like Huntress, or heck, any kind of data checks, or, if you're using any firewall and their dashboards to go through and verify things like that. You're using automation these days. What you need to do is see if that is the best automation for it. And that comes back to our previous point that different kinds of automation are used for different purposes. Make sure that you have yours tailored to support what you need to support.
Yeah, and I'm just jotting down a few notes as you are kind of going through that information. I think, it's clear the devil is in the details, right? And being able to address kind of custom automation workflows, you really do need to do the legwork with those clients. You have to be able to truly understand their processes, get into the weeds with them, and really understand it end to end in any capacity to truly address this kind of automation in a customized sense, right? You need to see the entire landscape so that if you're trying to automate one portion, you don't know the downstream effects. It is a kind of full picture requirement. So I think that's a really important point to note. And I think to the question's maybe essence, and again, forgive me if I'm not getting to the point, Mr. MSP, but there is a component of over automation, right? There is a notion that you can take too many steps away from the human resource and begin really causing a lot of headache with a kind of over automation.
Absolutely. And that's what people need to realize, is that when it comes to automation is not a replacement for human effort, for human ingenuity. Realize that there is a place for you in all of this, even if you automate everything. Because at the end of the day, we as a species are tired of talking to computers. It's fun chatting with ChatGPT and trying to mess it on up, but at the end of the day, we would all prefer to just talk to somebody and work out a problem with that. That's why they're hiring you instead of just some nameless, faceless organization that they just go and get done stuff with. You are the human component behind that, and you have a job that needs to be done with this. With automation, understand that there's, kind of there is a point of diminishing returns where, you go through and automate everything in there and you start focusing more and more on automation. And now you're spending more time trying to automate things that you could do yourself than actually winning time back, for what the automations should be doing for yourself. So be cognizant of that.
Yeah. It's, we always need the right tool for the right job. And I think exactly as Jonathan mentioned, in addition to the different capacities and availabilities of automation types, their application is equally as nuanced. So you really do have to have that active role in being able to address. So now we're going to get into, I'm just kind of scanning through some information. We've covered a good deal, but there's one that I'd like to kick off with. It's just around enhancing threat detection and response with automation. A simple how-to. I can see that we've kind of highlighted a few others thus far. Reviewing some notes, I see that there's a couple other areas that the audience is interested in. So let's begin with threat detection and response and how automation can kind of play in that sandbox.
Well, Yeah, you've got, I mean, threat detection and response. So on the detection side, you can use automation through a number of great tools to go and analyze logs, to go and see what's coming on your network layers, as well as anything on device. If you're not running a device manager on your company devices, please do install one. I don't care if it seems like it's a little bit of an invasion of their privacy. If that's your device, you got to do that. To the response side, um automation can cover practically every aspect of the response thing. Things like shutting down network connections if bad connections are coming on in, running automated backups and restoring from backups when something bad happens, being able to understand when data is being exfiltrated and shutting that down, understanding the credentials may be being used for said data exfiltration, doing checks on that to see if you've got expired credential or what should be expired credentials that aren't, or that if you're trying to run like a zero trust architecture, are you actually zero trust, or are you just kind of sort of trust? There's a lot that you can really use automation to just cover, and that gets back to there's a tool for everything. Be the best part of your stack and figure out where you can go through, once again, your client needs, and how to go and use automation to make this better for you.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. I think we have to leverage what is available to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the threat detection and response. I know that we had spoken previously around vulnerability management. We also spoke to some aspects of continuous monitoring, compliance, also scalability and efficiency. I see in the notes here, there's a couple other areas, so I'm just going to kind of go one by one. So what would you say, Jonathan, around automation and its ability to enhance aspects like identity access management?
So looking at IAM, identity and access management, understand that you should have your users have access to only the things that they should have access to, and blah 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 blah. What happens when somebody is off of a project, hasn't they're not been fired, they've just been moved off of a project? Do you still give them access to it? Do they still want access? Are they still contributing? Are you verifying this? Okay, are you going through and checking every time that someone logs in from off-site that they have maybe different access to certain files and stuff that may be more secure and things like that? Your dentist office, patient records, stuff like that. How do you handle compliance, that kind of thing? Automation can check all of that. Automation can verify all of that. Automation can run continuous checks to say, hey, this person hasn't accessed this directory for a year or a month or a week. Should they still have access to it? And let you know so that you can go and handle that. Once again, be the best part of your stack, but let automation make you better.
Yeah, and I think you even touched upon that notion of a least privileged access model, the ties between identity and access management, and even privilege access management, privilege identity management, and ultimately this is a key area of vulnerability. You don't get to data without credentials, and so I think it's an important point around this value and benefit of automation. There are a few more here. I just also want to be cognizant of time. So let's talk about security policy enforcement. How can automation assist in terms of an MSP's addressing that security policy enforcement, both maybe internally as well as within their client base?
I mean, automation is great for enforcing those security policies consistently across an organization. Like if you want consistency, have a computer do it.
Yes.
It does not need its coffee in the morning.
Yes, exactly.
And so, really, when it comes down to security policy enforcement, like you want something that's as objective and as cold as possible to be handling that, so that you can handle the exceptions. You want something so that you can be the good person with the system being the bad person, the good cop versus bad cop on this. But you also want it to be your RoboCop, your Terminator, in the sense that you want it to be constantly moving. You want it to be constantly acting and doing this and enforcing that so that you can come through and find those edge cases.
Excellent. We have another one that I'd like to highlight, and I just again, we do have a number of other questions I want to get to. So let's talk about SOAR, or security orchestration, right? And let's talk about automation in terms of how that aligns.
Hey, it's the A in SOAR is the automation, security orchestration, automation, and response. Orchestration is just making sure that all of the tools in your stack work together. Automation is making sure that, hey, when those do talk to one another, you've got playbooks to go through and handle things, which leads to the R, the response. I could do a little like SOAR dance or something. But with this in mind, you need to have that automation to do something about the orchestration to the response. Otherwise, you're missing that link and the engine's taking off with the caboose just sitting there. So once again, be the best part of your stack. Understand that if you have pieces of your stack that aren't working together, you need to make them work together, or you need to find better pieces of your stack because they all fit it. In today's day and age, everything should be able to integrate with everything. And if there isn't an already pre-built automatic one, there are ways of going through and scripting that out that you can either hire people to do or do it yourself.
Yeah.
But without the A, you're not going to get the response, or at least you're not going to get a good enough response. And frankly, good enough isn't worth it these days.
I think that it's even in that name of orchestration, right? And the conductor, being again the best part of your stack. And I think it is that critical element of the human element that all of these systems are working on these different functions and their capacity. But it really takes is the security professional to step in, be able to, I think it was maybe a Steve Jobs line, and play the orchestra.
Yep.
He's not playing the instruments, but he's playing the orchestra, and that is again what you need to do, for your clients, and be able to ensure that cohesion with all these systems, because that's how again you're making yourself the best part of that stack, right? All these independent solutions are great, but the cohesion of what you're trying to have them do together is what we're after.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, so the next question I have is, how do we use all of these tools to actually solve problems like, and they've listed out, phishing, 0-day, credential privilege access. So we've talked about that, data exfiltration, lockdowns, lockouts. And I have the list here for you. So if you want to take one at a time, if I went too fast there, where would you like to start, Jonathan?
So we've already talked a little bit about phishing and credential and privilege,
Yes.
privilege access and, IAM and all that kind of thing. So I'll start with those two, just quickly knock them down. Use phishing fish your clients. You should fish your clients. That's how you train people, is you go and hit them. And for the people that didn't get hit, they get a pizza party. For the people that did get hit, they get school. It's carrot and a stick. I know you
Extra
hate
training.
it.
Extra
Everybody
training.
hates it, but it works. Automate that. If you use like KnowBe4 or Fishline or FishMe, whatever you're using, that's automation. That's automating that training component of that. But also go and have that, running on their systems to check their emails for that kind of content and flagging that. We already have that for, is this a, unsure sender? That's automation. You're using it. Identity access management. You check your credentials, please, people. The amount of things I still have access to that I shouldn't. And I take my friend who still works at that old company out and go, hey, you need to remove my credential access. And they go, yeah, I guess I do. That please. What else? 0-day threats. We talked about reaction versus proaction. More often than not, the people that are going to be on this call aren't going to be the ones dealing with the newest of new threats, with your spear phishing attack against one specific aspect of this organization. More often than not, you will not be the first person attacked. So talk to everybody. Remember that you are the best part of your stack, or you need to be the best part of your stack, but that something else that should be part of your stack is the community. Talk to them. Figure out what's going on. And if you find things out that are ways of solving things, reply, post, let them know about that. Being able to share this information and keep ourselves protected is what keeps us safe. There is a social safety net for cybersecurity. Use it. Secondly, use automation so that just in case if you are the unlucky schmuck who does have to go and deal with being the 0-second threat, the first person to really get the punch in the nards, you are ready and have the time and brain pan to go and do it. So be the best part of your stack. That's how you deal with 0-day. Data exfiltration. Once again, have systems running that go and check and make sure that you're the one, that your data that may be leaving your network is going to good sources, that you don't have a massive quantity of data leaving all at once, or even if it's being part and parceled out, that the person's, once again, gets back to privileged access management, things like that. Verify data transfers, verify people logging on in, use multi-factor. And what was the last one? Lockdowns and lockouts?
Lockouts, yeah.
If you've got ransomware going on, use automation for automated backups. Automated backups are great. Automated backup restoration is even better. Figure out how to sequester computers from one another. If you're able to quarantine devices inside of a network, which you should be able to do, the technology is there, we have it, it should be installed, allow yourself to be able to shut down somebody and take the flack from that. Because being able to set, shove all of that into one bad place and then just restore that 1 to 3 to 5 computers or devices or whatever is far better than you having to deal with it's made it into every part of your organization and VPN into all of your offsites, and every time you try to fix one it keeps coming in from the others. Like there are really good ways that you already have to automate this stuff that if you're not using it, you do use it, please.
Yeah. Very good. So I think we're coming up on the top of the hour. I think we have time for one more question, and there's a few other items I just want to touch upon at the conclusion. So our last question for the day: how do MSPs strike the right balance between automated threat mitigation and human intervention, especially in critical situations?
Well, I said it before, I'll say it again. Be the best part of your stack. Be the best automation. Go and understand what you have. Go and understand what you're automating so that you can go and handle the stuff that you need to handle. It's not that hard to think about it, but like automating your workday so that you have time to take a deep breath and think is a good thing. Thinking that you need to have that work ethic level of I need to be constantly doing and working is not where an MSP should be. You should always have things to do, don't get me wrong, but they should be things that you need to do, not that your computers or systems or integrations or stack can do. It's things that you should do. So if you feel like you're making busy work for yourself just to work, that is dumb. Be smart and automate that so you can be even smarter and handle the stuff that you need to handle.
Yeah, I think, interpretation, right? I think that automation is so great in terms of the use of an if then and on off of, it can kind of simplify the mountain of those type of simple types of tasks. But when it comes to interpreting based on, multiple pieces of evidence and being able to, add a level of you know that human interpretation, I think, is really what you need to focus on. But again, I think, the highlight: be the best part of your stack, understand what your clients are trying to address, do the legwork to really get the process, and leverage automation to be able to lighten that workload so that you can be proactive in other places. But
Absolutely.
really, John, thank you so much. I think that does wrap us for the Q&A portion. If you would like to speak with us further at Celerium, myself will share a link for my meeting space. You can just use that link and schedule time with us. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, we do have this quick opinion poll. Please let us know your feedback on a scale of 1 to 10. Let us know how we're doing, obviously 10 being the best. Lastly, we do appreciate the time. Look forward to speaking with you again soon. But as this is the beginning of December, we have the holidays right around the corner, and we'll probably see you sometime in 2024. Want to wish everyone a very happy holiday season, and please check us out on LinkedIn and YouTube, as well as learning more at celerium.com/WSP _ CyberCorner. But thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and talk soon.